Welcome to Lesson 9 for Unit C4. My name is Daniel Ndisi, and I use OpenSciEd in my classroom. In Lesson 9, our abstract stoichiometry hits a wall against the messy reality of global scale. Throughout this lesson, we are going to challenge our students to take a chemically perfect formula and stress test it against the actual size of our planet. Let's anchor where we've been in this unit storyline up to this point. And in Lesson 8, our students made a big conceptual discovery. They figured out that coefficients in a balanced equation represent precise particle number ratios and used molar mass to calculate how much base neutralizes a specific amount of acid. Now we are moving from that small scale, perfect mathematical world into wondering how we apply these tools to scale a solution up for the entire oyster hatchery, tank, and also eventually the entire ocean. Let's talk about logistics for this particular lesson, which is a 2-day investigation focused on mathematical modeling. You will need about 20 minutes of prep time to print the ocean water calculation handouts and set up your class-specific exit ticket link. There are no wet labs to clean up, and students will dedicate their full attention to dimensional analysis and scientific notation. Just remember to have devices charged for the exit ticket. Overall, we're going to break Lesson 9 into two main sense-making loops. In this first loop, the class evaluates the idea of dumping sodium hydroxide directly into the ocean to fix acidity. They quickly decide it's smarter to test the math on a smaller 1,000-liter hatchery tank first. By using molarity, mole ratios, and molar mass, they do partner work to calculate the exact mass of base needed. They figure out the small-scale chemistry operates beautifully, which naturally makes them wonder how to unleash this mathematical model on the entire planet. During the second loop, students independently apply their calculations to the staggering volume of the ocean, 1.34 times 10 to the 21st liters. They crunch these massive numbers and figure out that while the math works perfectly on paper, the physical scale destroys the feasibility of the solution. It requires an impossible 250 million carloads of sodium hydroxide. This realization triggers a shift where they look at this engineering problem and wonder what alternative biological subproblems we need to figure out next. By the end of this lesson, the class will have co-constructed three main ideas. First, pH indicates a specific hydrogen ion concentration, allowing us to find total moles of H+ in any volume. Second, mathematical models let us predict outcomes assuming matter is conserved. And crucially, they see that scale completely dictates engineering feasibility, and a solution that functions perfectly in a closed 1,000-liter tank fails in the massive open global ocean system. Let's look at some pivotal instructional moments of Lesson 9. In Part 3 of the lesson, students are actively working in pairs with their ocean water calculations handout, figuring out how to use molarity as a conversion factor. As you walk around the room, you'll want to have students working in pairs, collaborating, sharing their ideas on how to solve the problem, and discussing how to get their units to cross out. This moment is instructionally important because stoichiometry completely terrifies many students, and the correct final answer can be deceptive if they just memorize a formula. I watch student pairs and ask them to explain their process out loud, making sure they can articulate why liters cancel out to leave real physical moles of a substance. You may want to create a flowchart or a template to support some students so they can have a starting point and reference to engage each problem with. During Part 8 on Day 2, students are looking up at the board where the final calculation, 5.0 times 10 to the 11th kilograms of sodium hydroxide, is written out. It is important for them to discover that this number is not feasible or a realistic solution. This is the conceptual collision where math meets reality, and it's important to lean hard into this moment. I literally stop the class and ask if we even have 250 million carloads of chemicals on Earth, and remind them that the ocean is an open system continually absorbing more CO2 anyways, meaning we would be bailing out a boat with a massive hole in the bottom. At the close of Day 2 in Part 7, students are independently working on their laptops or tablets to complete the electronic exit ticket. This is our summative check on whether they can reason mathematically about the conservation of matter across varying scales. I do not mark a kid completely wrong or drop their grade significantly for a arithmetic slip or missed decimal. I look at the aggregate results quickly to see if their logic is fundamentally sound. A consistently strong approach to solving the problem meets my expectations, but correct responses are usually needed to earn the highest marks of mastery. Since we have officially proven that dumping giant carloads of bases into the open ocean is completely impractical, the class storyline pivots. In Lesson 10, we are going to look at how ocean acidification actually harms the oysters on a biological level. The thinking is that if we understand the exact mechanism of harm at the particle level, we can design more localized, realistic engineering solutions. Let's take a look at some classroom tested material management advice and teaching strategies that have worked for me. When students are working through calculations and conceptual models in this lesson, I have student pairs collaborate using vertical whiteboards. You'll see students standing together, actively sketching out unit conversions or particle models at eye level across the room. Working vertically naturally encourages real-time discussion and allows groups who get stuck to easily creep on their neighbors to see how other pairs are setting up their workflow. From a teaching standpoint, this high visibility makes it easy for me to scan the room at a glance, gauge overall understanding, and triage supports to the pairs that need immediate help without interrupting the flow of the rest of the class. When students calculate that final ocean mass, the scientific notation can make the number feel abstract and disconnected from reality. There is often a natural misunderstanding of math, and students assume that because their calculations were done right, that the problem is solved. They also lack confidence in scientific notation, and it may be helpful to have them write this number out in standard form and try to give it a name. Watching them write out that long string of zeros helps them visually grasp the gargantuan magnitude of the material required. Creating an analogy to exactly how big that much is in distance or money can help bring out the idea that this is not possible. It can also be fun to write out a mole of particles in standard form again, just to reinforce how big a mole is, since this number, which is already not feasible, is just a fraction of what a mole would be. Because day 2 intentionally removes the heavy scaffolding from day 1 to build independence, you will definitely have students get stuck and raise their hands for help. I highly recommend resisting the urge to rescue them or walk through the whole class through with the formula. What works for me is going up to them and saying, "Show me how you solved this for the tank yesterday. Now apply that same logic and those exact same units to this new bigger volume." There is an optional stoichiometry practice handout focused on carbon sequestration. When I look at this resource, I want to make sure we are deploying it deliberately based on exit ticket data rather than just using it as a filler. One thing to keep in mind is that the final unit transfer task in Lesson 15 explicitly requires students to use mathematical representations and unit conversions to track carbon dioxide production. Because there is a long 6-lesson gap between this calculation loop and that final assessment, running this optional practice immediately in Lesson 9 might lead to a drop in proficiency by the time they reach the end of the unit. I found it helps to hold on to this handout and deploy it a bit later, or to chunk the problems out as warm-ups across the upcoming engineering lessons to keep these conversion skills fresh and in context. In my own classroom, I actually add at least a full day here instructionally to work directly with students on stoichiometry calculations. This can be done in a variety of ways, whether through targeted workshops or structured collaborative setups, but students definitely need consistent practice to achieve real proficiency. If you have an entire section that needs extra support during this time, one strategy that has worked well for me is to provide completed sample solutions that contain a subtle mathematical error. Having pairs analyze the workflow and find and fix the mistake removes the initial barrier of a blank page and keeps them focused on critical thinking and ratio analysis. There are no new formal vocabulary terms for students to earn or define in their glossaries for this lesson. They will encounter some industry terms like spat or seed oysters in the context of the reading, but our focus stays entirely on deepening their comfort with previously earned terms like molarity, moles, and molar mass. You can keep the markers away because they will not be generating any new classroom wall posters. The only thing your students need to physically update is the science ideas and possible solution section inside their progress trackers. Thank you for taking the time to prepare to instruct lesson 9. In Lesson 10, we will engage in an investigation that grounds the entire ocean acidification crisis in a visual, chemical reality that forces students to question some common misconceptions. Thanks for taking the time to learn Lesson 9. You got this.